I canceled the wedding I paid for. After my stepdaughter banned me from her wedding, now they're demanding I pay it back because I'm rich anyway. Hey Reddit, never thought I'd be typing this out, but here we are. My stepdaughter banned me from the wedding I was fully funding, so I canceled everything. Now my wife and her entire family are demanding I reimburse them, because apparently I'm just a walking bank account. Buckle up, because this got ugly fast. I'm Dave, 48M, and I've been married to Linda, 46F, for 12 years. She came into the marriage with a daughter, Amber, who was 10 at the time. I don't have kids of my own, never married before Linda, so I figured I'd do right by this kid who was about to become part of my life. I run a commercial HVAC business. Started from the bottom, apprentice at 19, journeyman by 25, master tech by 30, opened my own shop at 33. Nothing fancy, just solid work that keeps buildings from turning into ovens in Arizona summers. I've got 8 guys working for me now, and we pull in decent money. Not millionaire territory, but comfortable enough that money stopped being a daily stress about 5 years ago. Linda worked retail management when we met. Nice woman, down to earth, or so I thought. Her ex-husband had bailed when Amber was 6, sent maybe 3 child support checks in 4 years, then disappeared completely. No idea where the guy went. And honestly, neither did Linda. Just ghosted his own kid like she was a rental car he didn't feel like returning. When Linda and I got together, I made it clear I wasn't trying to replace Amber's dad, but I also wasn't going to half do this stepfather thing. If I was going to be in this kid's life, I was going to be present, reliable, and actually give a dang. Revolutionary concept, apparently. The early years were good. Amber was a quiet kid, kind of shy, liked drawing and watching cooking shows even though she couldn't actually cook anything beyond microwave meals. I taught her how to change a tire, balance a checkbook, and file taxes. Normal life stuff that her bio dad should have taught her, but never bothered to. Those first couple years, I made a real effort. Showed up to her middle school band concerts, even though the 6th grade orchestra sounded like cats being strangled. Helped her with math homework at the kitchen table when Linda was working late shifts. Built her a bookshelf for her room, because she'd started collecting manga, and needed somewhere to put it all. Little things that add up over time. When she turned 13, we had this whole awkward phase where she didn't want a stepdad hanging around. Normal teenager stuff, I guess. But I kept showing up anyway. Drove her to soccer practice twice a week without complaining. Taught her how to parallel park in empty parking lots on Sunday mornings. Fixed her laptop when it crashed right before a big school project was due. I paid for her braces. $3,000 over 2 years. Covered her car insurance when she turned 16. Bought her first car, a used Honda Civic with 60,000 miles that ran perfectly because I went over every inch of it myself. Spent a whole Saturday going through the vehicle history, checking the transmission, making sure the timing belt had been replaced. When she wanted to join the volleyball team but Linda couldn't afford the fees and equipment, I handled it without making it a big deal. Her senior year, I sat through every parent-teacher conference, showed up to her volleyball games when I could, and helped her fill out college applications. Must have reviewed her entrance essay 15 times, helping her polish it until it actually sounded like something a college admissions officer would want to read. When she got accepted to State University, I told her I'd cover tuition and books if she maintained a 3.0 GPA and worked part-time to cover her other expenses. Seemed fair. I'd invest in her education, she'd invest in her work ethic. She agreed. For 4 years, I wrote checks for tuition, bought textbooks that cost more than my first car payment, and never once made her feel like she owed me. Because she didn't. That's what parents do. Even the step variety. College was actually good for Amber. She found her groove, made friends, seemed happier than she'd been in high school. I'd get updates from Linda about her joining study groups and getting decent grades. Every semester when the tuition bill came, I'd write the check without hesitation. When her laptop died sophomore year, I replaced it. When her car needed major repairs junior year, I covered it. That's just what you do for family. She'd come home for breaks and actually seemed excited to see us. Would tell stories about her classes, her roommates, the campus activities she was involved with. Started volunteering at a local food bank, which I thought showed real character. For a while there, I actually felt like all the investment was paying off. She was becoming a solid young adult. During college, Amber dated a few guys. Normal college relationships that lasted a semester or two before fizzling out. There was the pre-med student who turned out to be failing half his classes. The guy from her economics course who dumped her over text after 3 weeks. The typical college romance stuff that everyone goes through. Nothing serious, nothing that lasted. Then senior year, she met Brett. Brett was something. 26 years old, working as a marketing consultant, which apparently meant he ran social media accounts for local businesses from a laptop at various coffee shops. The guy had one of those carefully groomed beards and wore athleisure everywhere, like he was constantly heading to or from the gym, though I never actually saw evidence he worked out. First time Amber brought him to dinner, I tried to keep an open mind. Linda was already gushing about how charming he was, how well-spoken, how ambitious. I watched him spend 10 minutes explaining his brand philosophy and content strategy, like he was running Apple instead of posting photos on Instagram for a used car dealership. First time I met Brett, he tried to give me business advice about my HVAC company, the business I'd built from nothing over 15 years. He suggested I optimize my social media presence and leverage influencer partnerships to disrupt the industry. I asked him how influencer partnerships would help me install a commercial chiller system. He changed the subject. The kid had opinions about everything. Told me my truck was bad for the environment, and I should consider a Tesla. Suggested I was leaving money on the table by not expanding faster. Questioned why I didn't have a receptionist answering phones when I could afford the overhead. All this from a 26-year-old who lived with his parents and drove a beat-up Corolla. But Amber was head over heels, and Linda thought Brett was charming. So I kept my mouth shut and stayed polite. Kid was in love, and pointing out that her boyfriend was basically a professional coffee shop occupant wouldn't help anything. I'd learned that lesson with her previous boyfriends. Criticizing them just made her defensive and pushed her closer to them. They got engaged last Christmas. Brett proposed at some fancy restaurant, got down on one knee, made a whole production of it. According to Amber's breathless retelling, he'd arranged for the staff to bring out champagne and dessert with "Will you marry me?" written in chocolate. The whole restaurant apparently applauded. Very theatrical, very Instagram-worthy. Amber called us crying happy tears, and Linda spent an hour on the phone squealing with her about wedding plans. I congratulated them and meant it. If Amber was happy, I was happy. Brett called me the next day asking to meet for coffee. Figured he wanted to do the traditional ask permission thing after the fact. We met at one of his usual coffee shop haunts, and he spent 20 minutes talking about his 5-year plan, his career trajectory, and his vision for the future before getting to the point. "I want you to know I'm going to take care of Amber," he said, like he was presenting a business proposal. "We're building something really special here." "That's good to hear," I said. "She's told me so much about you, about how you've supported her all these years. That's really cool, man. Not every guy would step up like that." The way he said it made it sound like I'd done something extraordinary instead of just basic parenting. But I nodded and thanked him. "We're going to need some help with the wedding," he continued. "Amber's got this vision, you know, and I want to make it perfect for her. I was hoping you and Linda might be able to contribute." Contribute. That's always code for pay for everything. "We'll see what we can do," I told him. Then came the planning. Linda and Amber started looking at venues immediately. Before Brett and Amber even set a date, they were touring reception halls and looking at floral arrangements online. Every evening, Linda would sit at the kitchen table with her laptop, scrolling through wedding Pinterest boards and vendor websites. Amber would call 3 or 4 times a day with new ideas, new requirements, new must-have elements for her special day. I figured they'd pick something reasonable, maybe a nice hotel ballroom, a local garden venue, something in the $15,000 to $20,000 range that wouldn't require a second mortgage. That seemed like plenty for a nice wedding. Most of my guys at the shop had gotten married for less than $10,000 and had beautiful ceremonies. I was wrong. They picked the Sanctuary Estate. If you're not familiar with Phoenix area venues, the Sanctuary Estate is where people with more money than sense get married. We're talking $50,000 just for the venue rental. 60 guests minimum, 200 maximum, and every single add-on costs enough to fund a decent used car. Linda sat me down one evening with spreadsheets and Pinterest boards. Amber wanted a spring wedding, April specifically. The venue, catering, flowers, photographer, videographer, DJ, and decorations came to roughly $90,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. $90,000? I repeated, making sure I'd heard right. "It's her special day," Linda said, like that justified the price of a luxury sedan. "She's been dreaming about this since she was a little girl. Most little girls dream about being princesses. Doesn't mean I'm buying a castle." Linda's face fell. "I thought you cared about Amber." There it was. The emotional manipulation. If I truly cared, I'd bankrupt myself to fund a wedding that cost more than most people's annual salary. Here's the thing, though. I could afford it. Business was good. I had savings, investments, and the company was profitable. $90,000 would hurt, but it wouldn't destroy me financially. And Amber had been a good kid. She'd kept her grades up, worked part-time like we agreed, graduated on time. She'd held up her end of our arrangement. So I said yes. Linda cried happy tears. Amber came over the next day and hugged me, thanking me repeatedly for making her dreams come true. Brett shook my hand and called me generous, which felt weird coming from a guy who was contributing exactly $0 to this wedding. Over the next few months, I wrote checks. Venue deposit, $15,000. Catering deposit, $12,000. Photographer, $4,000. Florist, $6,000. It added up fast, every week another invoice or deposit request. I started joking with my buddy Jake that I should have just bought Amber a house and called it a wedding gift. Would have been cheaper and actually useful long term. Jake owns a plumbing business, been married twice, paid for both weddings. He laughed and said I was getting off easy. His second wedding cost $110,000 and ended in divorce 18 months later. At least Amber appreciates you, he said. That's worth something. I thought so too. Right up until 3 weeks before the wedding. I was in the shop working on an estimate when Linda called. Her voice had that weird, tight quality that meant something bad was coming. We need to talk about the wedding, she said. What's wrong? Did the caterer cancel? No, nothing like that. It's just, Amber and Brett have been talking, and they've decided they want the wedding to be more intimate, just close family and friends. Okay, I said slowly, not seeing the problem yet. How many people are we cutting from the guest list? Long pause. They're cutting some of the extended family, Brett's aunts and uncles, a few cousins, and they're asking that you not attend the ceremony. The air left my lungs. I'm sorry, what? It's nothing personal, Linda said quickly. They just want it to be blood relatives only. Brett's being very particular about the guest list, and since you're technically not Amber's biological father, I've been her father for 12 years. I know, and she loves you, but this is her wedding day, and she wants it to feel authentic, just immediate family. I sat there in my office chair, staring at the wall where I'd hung Amber's high school graduation photo, the one where she was wearing her cap and gown, holding her diploma, smiling at the camera while I stood next to her, arm around her shoulders. I'm funding this wedding, I said flatly. Every single dollar. And she's uninviting me. She's not uninviting you from the reception. Just the ceremony. You can come to the reception afterward. You'll still be part of the celebration. Linda, I'm paying $90,000 and I'm not allowed to watch her get married. It's not about the money. Then give me one good reason why I can't attend the ceremony. Silence. She's trying to respect Brett's wishes, Linda finally said. His parents are very traditional. They believe weddings should be for blood family only. And what do you believe? More silence. That's when I knew. Linda wasn't fighting for me. She wasn't telling Amber this was wrong, or standing up for the man who'd raised her daughter for over a decade. She was calling to deliver the message, and expected me to accept it. I need to think about this, I said. Dave, please don't make this difficult. It's just one ceremony. You'll still be at the reception, and that's where all the fun happens anyway. I hung up without responding. Sat there in my office for maybe 20 minutes, just processing. Then I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First call was to the venue. Explained I was the one who'd paid all the deposits and wanted to confirm their cancellation policy. The event coordinator, a woman named Patricia, who I'd worked with on all the arrangements, sounded confused. Are you canceling the wedding, Mr. Harrison? Just checking my options. What's the cancellation policy 3 weeks out? You'd forfeit the deposits, but we'd refund anything beyond that. However, I should mention that the bride recently contacted us requesting changes to the guest list. She wanted to remove your name from the ceremony attendance, but keep you listed for the reception. She did she? Yes, sir. We found it unusual since you're listed as the primary payer on all the contracts. Interesting. So this wasn't a sudden decision. Amber had already started making changes without telling me. I'll be in touch, I said, and ended the call. Next call was to the caterer. Same story. Amber had contacted them about modifying the guest count and requested I be removed from the ceremony seating chart. The caterer had flagged it because my name was on the contract. Third call was to the photographer. Amber had specifically requested that no photos be taken of me during the ceremony, since I wouldn't be in attendance. The photographer had found this odd, but noted the request. This wasn't Brett's parents being traditional. This was Amber actively erasing me from her wedding while still expecting me to fund it. I made one more call, to Jake. Tell me I'm not crazy, I said after explaining the situation. You're not crazy, you're getting screwed. What are you going to do? I'm going to cancel everything. Everything? Every single thing? Jake was quiet for a moment. You sure about this? That's going to cause some serious drama. I've been paying for a wedding I'm not invited to. How much worse can the drama get? Fair point. Need backup? Nah, but thanks. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone, called every vendor, explained I was exercising my right as the primary payer to cancel services, and asked about refund timelines. Some were sympathetic, some were annoyed. All of them processed the cancellations because my name was on every single contract. The venue couldn't refund the deposit, but everything else came back. The caterer kept their deposit, but refunded the remaining balance. The photographer was actually cool about it. She'd sensed something was off and refunded everything, including the deposit, after I explained the situation. The florist, DJ, and everyone else followed suit. By the end of the day, I'd recovered about 70,000 of the 90,000 I'd put in. The remaining 20 grand was gone. But considering I was saving myself from funding a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend, it felt like a bargain. Then I waited. Linda called around 6 that evening, which meant Amber had started getting cancellation notifications from vendors. What did you do? Linda's voice was shaking. I canceled the wedding. You what? I canceled the wedding I was paying for. The one I'm not invited to. You can't do that. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I can and I did. My name is on every contract. I'm the one who paid the deposits. And I'm not funding a wedding I'm not allowed to attend. Linda started yelling. Something about how I was ruining Amber's special day over my ego, how I was being petty and vindictive, how I was showing my true colors after all these years. I let her rant until she ran out of steam. Linda, I've spent 12 years raising your daughter. I paid for her braces, her car, her college. I treated her like my own kid because that's what you do when you love someone. And now she's telling me I'm not good enough to watch her get married because I'm not blood family. So no, I'm not paying for that. She was just trying to respect Brett's family traditions. Then Brett's family can pay for those traditions. They want a blood relatives only wedding? Great. They can fund it. I hung up before she could respond. The house was silent when I got home. Linda was in the bedroom with the door locked. I made dinner, ate alone, and watched a baseball game in the living room like it was any other Tuesday evening. Around 9, my phone started blowing up. First Amber, then Linda's sister, then Amber's friends, then people I'd never even met. All of them telling me what a horrible person I was for sabotaging Amber's wedding. One of Amber's bridesmaids actually texted, "How can you do this to her? She's been planning this for months." I responded, "She spent those months planning a wedding she didn't want me at. I just stopped funding it." The bridesmaid didn't reply. Around 10, Amber called. I answered, "How could you do this to me?" She was crying. "You're ruining my wedding." "I'm not ruining anything, Amber. I'm just not paying for something I'm not invited to. You're invited to the reception, but not the ceremony. Not the actual wedding. Just the party afterward where I get to write checks and smile for photos like a prop. It's not like that." "Then explain it to me. Explain how it makes sense to ban me from watching you get married after I paid for everything." She couldn't. Started crying harder, saying it wasn't fair, that she'd already sent out invitations, that all her friends were expecting this amazing wedding. "You can still have it," I said calmly. "Just ask Brett's parents to pay for it, since they're the ones who wanted this blood relatives only policy. They can't afford it. Then I guess you'll need to pick a more affordable option." "I hate you!" She screamed it so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I hate you and I never want to see you again." "Okay," I said and hung up. Linda came out of the bedroom then, looking like she'd been crying for hours. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "You've destroyed our daughter's wedding. She's your daughter, not ours." She made that very clear. That's not what she meant. That's exactly what she meant. Blood relatives only. I don't qualify. Linda sat on the couch, head in her hands. "What do you want me to do? Tell her she can't get married? I want you to acknowledge that what they did was wrong. That banning me from the ceremony while expecting me to pay for everything was disrespectful and hurtful. I want you to stand up for your husband instead of making excuses for your daughter." She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "She's my baby. I can't take sides against her. You already took sides, just not mine." I went to the guest room and slept there. Haven't been back to the master bedroom since. The next few days were chaos. Amber and Brett were scrambling to either rebook everything for the original date or postpone. Problem was they had no money. Brett worked his coffee shop laptop gig. Amber made maybe $30,000 a year as a junior accountant. Combined, they could afford a backyard barbecue, not a sanctuary estate wedding. They started a GoFundMe. The description was masterful. Talked about how their family situation had changed unexpectedly, and they were trying to salvage their special day. Made it sound like someone had died, not like they'd screwed over the person funding their wedding. The GoFundMe raised $1,100. most of it from people who didn't know the full story. Linda's family started calling me. Her sister demanded I fix this and restore the wedding. Her mother left a voicemail about family loyalty. Her brother sent a text calling me selfish. I didn't respond to any of them. Jake came by the shop with food and told me the neighborhood gossip chain was going crazy. Linda's sister had been telling everyone I'd canceled Amber's wedding because I was jealous of Brett. Jealous? I asked. Of what? His laptop? Jake laughed. According to Carol, you're threatened by Brett's success and couldn't stand not being the center of attention. Brett lives with his parents and drives a 2009 Corolla with a cracked windshield. What success am I supposed to be threatened by? The narrative kept spreading, though. I was the villain who'd sabotaged a young couple's wedding out of spite. The fact that they'd uninvited me from the ceremony never made it into the story, just that I'd cruelly withdrawn funding at the last minute. 2 weeks before the original wedding date, Amber and Brett showed up at my shop. I was in the back working on an estimate when my secretary buzzed me that they were in the waiting room. I made them wait 15 minutes on purpose. Let them sit in those uncomfortable plastic chairs while I finished my work. Then I walked out, still in my work clothes, and looked at them. Amber's eyes were red. Brett looked uncomfortable. Both of them seemed smaller somehow. We'd like to talk, Amber said quietly. So talk. Maybe somewhere private? I led them back to my office, didn't offer them seats, and leaned against my desk with my arms crossed. Classic power move that I'd learned from years of negotiating with contractors. Make them stand. Make them uncomfortable. Maintain the high ground. They stood there awkwardly, both fidgeting, clearly not used to being in a position where they weren't in control. Amber started crying immediately. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Brett's parents put so much pressure on us about the wedding being family only, and I just wanted to keep everyone happy by making me the exception. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Amber? She wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara. They have this tradition. Brett's dad's family has always done weddings with just blood relatives at the ceremony. It's been that way for generations. We didn't want to offend them, and me being there would offend them? They're very particular about family traditions. Have you met Brett's parents? I asked. Well, not yet, but Brett's told me all about them and their expectations. I looked at Brett. Your parents who are so traditional about weddings, have they offered to help pay for this traditional wedding? He shifted uncomfortably. They're on a fixed income. They can't really afford to contribute much. But they can afford to have opinions about who attends. It's not like that, man. Then what's it like? Explain it to me in a way that makes sense. You want a traditional blood relatives only wedding that your traditional parents can't afford, so you're asking the guy you're excluding to pay for it. How does that math work? Brett finally spoke up. Look, man, we screwed up. We see that now. We were wrong to exclude you from the ceremony. You've been nothing but good to Amber, and we should have respected that. Great. Thanks for the apology. So, you'll reinstate the wedding funding? There it was. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to get their money back. This whole emotional performance was just a means to an end. The tears, the remorse, the acknowledgement of wrongdoing. All of it was theater designed to get me to open my wallet again. No, I said simply. Amber's tears increased. But we can't afford to get married without your help. Sure you can. Just pick something within your budget. Courthouse wedding costs about $50. Or a backyard ceremony with cake and punch from Costco runs maybe $500 if you keep it small. But I wanted the sanctuary estate. I've been planning this for months. You've been planning a wedding you didn't want me at. That's your problem, not mine. Brett stepped forward, trying to look tough, puffed out his chest a bit, squared his shoulders. The classic intimidation pose that works when you're actually intimidating. Brett was about 5'9" and maybe 160 pounds. I had 6 inches and 50 pounds on him, plus 15 years of manual labor that had given me actual muscle instead of the aesthetic kind he probably worked on at the gym. You're being unreasonable. Amber said she's sorry. What more do you want? I want you to leave my office and figure out your own wedding. You're both adults. Act like it. You're rich anyway, Amber suddenly shouted. You can afford it. What's $90,000 to you? And there was the truth. I wasn't her father. I was a bank account, a funding source, someone who could afford it. So why shouldn't I pay? 12 years of being her stepdad, and when it came down to it, all I was worth to her was my wallet. What's $90,000 to me? I repeated slowly. It's my money that I earned from my business, and I get to decide what to spend it on. And I've decided not to spend it on people who don't want me at their wedding. That's so petty! Amber was full on screaming now. You're punishing me because your feelings got hurt. No, I'm declining to fund something I'm not invited to. There's a difference. Brett tried again. Look, we can compromise. What if you walked Amber down the aisle? Would that change your mind? I actually laughed. You want me to give Amber away at a wedding I'm paying for, then leave before the ceremony starts? How does that make sense? You could stay for the whole ceremony, Amber said quickly. We can make an exception for you specifically. Brett's parents will understand. Why would they understand now when they didn't understand 2 weeks ago? No answer. Here's what I think happened, I said. Brett's parents aren't traditional. They don't care who attends the wedding. You two decided on your own that you wanted it to be blood relatives only because you thought it sounded sophisticated or exclusive or whatever. Then you expected me to pay for this exclusive event I wasn't invited to. And now that the money's gone, suddenly I'm welcome to attend. The looks on their faces confirmed it. This had never been about Brett's parents or tradition. This had been about Amber and Brett wanting some picture-perfect family wedding, without the stepfather who'd done all the actual parenting. Get out of my office, I said. They tried arguing more, but I walked out and told my secretary to call the cops if they didn't leave voluntarily. They left. That evening, Linda ambushed me when I got home. Amber called me crying, she said, as I walked in the door. She said you were cruel to her. She wanted me to reinstate the wedding funding. I declined. You embarrassed her. She embarrassed herself by asking. Linda followed me to the kitchen. Why are you being so stubborn about this? It's just money. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? I turned to face her. It's about the fact that after 12 years, I'm not considered family. It's about being good enough to raise your daughter and pay her bills, but not good enough to watch her get married. It's about being treated like an ATM instead of a person. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending $90,000 on people who don't respect me. Linda's face crumpled. If you don't help them, they'll have to postpone the wedding indefinitely. Maybe years. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. They made their choice. You're breaking my heart, Linda whispered. Funny. Nobody seemed worried about breaking mine. The wedding date came and went with no wedding. Amber and Brett apparently tried to book the community center, but couldn't afford even that venue plus catering. They were still looking at options, all of which required money they didn't have. Linda's family blamed me entirely. Thanksgiving was coming up, and Linda's mother called to warn me that I wasn't welcome at the family dinner if I didn't fix Amber's wedding situation. Noted, I said and hung up. Jake invited me to Thanksgiving at his place instead. His daughter was in town with her husband and kids, and they always did a big spread. Linda went to her mother's house alone. I spent Thanksgiving eating good food with people who actually liked me. Got home around 9 to find Linda had cleared out half the house. Her clothes, personal items, and about a third of our furniture. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Staying with mother until you come to your senses. We need to talk about your behavior and what you're willing to do to make things right with Amber. I crumpled the note and threw it away. Called a lawyer the next morning. Started divorce proceedings by Tuesday. Linda called when she got served. You're divorcing me over this? No, I'm divorcing you because you chose your daughter over your husband. Because you enabled her to treat me like garbage, and then demanded I pay for the privilege. Because after 12 years together, you couldn't stand up for me even once. I can't believe you're doing this. Believe it. My attorney will be in touch about the settlement. Arizona is a community property state, so we had to split everything 50-50. The house, the savings, the investments. Linda fought for more, claiming she'd sacrificed her career to support mine. Her attorney argued she deserved additional compensation. My attorney pointed out Linda had never actually stopped working retail management. She'd changed stores twice but never took time off for my career. The judge wasn't impressed with her sacrifice claims. Settlement took 4 months. House got sold. Proceeds split. Savings split. Investment split. Linda walked away with about $300,000, which she immediately used to fund Amber's wedding. They finally got married at a mid-range hotel venue. I heard about it from Jake, who heard about it from his wife, who followed Amber on social media. The wedding looked nice enough. Not sanctuary estate nice, but decent. About 150 people attended. Linda walked Amber down the aisle since there was no father figure available. The photos made the rounds on social media. Amber in her dress, Brett in his suit, Linda crying happy tears. Everyone looked thrilled. The captions were full of finally and worth the wait and perfect day. Not one person mentioned that the wedding had been funded by Linda's divorce settlement, or that the settlement only existed because she'd chosen Amber over her marriage. I bought a condo downtown. Smaller than the house, but it's mine. No shared history, no memories of Linda in every room. just clean space to rebuild my life. Business stayed steady. Lost a couple clients who were friends with Linda's family and believed her version of events. Gained more from word of mouth. Turns out people like working with someone who's reliable and doesn't deal with family drama during business hours. Jake's daughter set me up with her coworker about 6 months after the divorce finalized. Nice woman, normal family, no kids. We dated for a while. Didn't work out long term, but it felt good to be with someone who treated me like an actual person instead of a funding source. Year after the divorce, I ran into Amber at the grocery store. She saw me first, hesitated, then decided to approach. I was in the meat section, picking out steaks for dinner, when I felt someone watching me. Looked up and there she was, standing about 10 feet away with a basket over her arm, clearly debating whether to pretend she hadn't seen me or come over. She chose to come over. "Hi, Dave," she said quietly. "Amber, how have you been?" "Good. You?" "Good. Married life is great. Brett's business is really taking off." I nodded and started pushing my cart away. Wasn't trying to be rude, just didn't see the point in small talk with someone who'd made it clear where I stood in her life. "Dave, wait." She looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from foot to foot. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry. About everything. The wedding. The way we treated you. It wasn't right. Thanks for saying that. Mom feels terrible about how everything ended." "I'm sure she does. Do you think maybe we could grab coffee sometime? Try to fix things? Start over?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw the kid I'd raised for 12 years. The one I'd taught to drive, helped with homework, supported through college. The one who'd called me crying after failing her first college exam. Who'd asked me to help her practice for job interviews. Who'd hugged me at her graduation and whispered, "Thank you for everything." Also saw the adult who'd decided I wasn't worth keeping around once my usefulness expired. Who'd screamed at me that I was rich anyway when I stopped funding her demands. I don't think that's a good idea, Amber. But we're family. No, we were family. Past tense. You made it very clear I was never really part of yours. Her eyes filled with tears. I was young and stupid. I made a mistake. You did. And I've moved on from it. So that's it? You're just going to cut me out forever? Hold this grudge for the rest of your life? I'm not holding a grudge. I'm just choosing not to let someone back into my life who already showed me exactly how little I mattered to them. That's not fair. I apologized. What more do you want from me? And that was the problem right there. She still thought this was about her, about what she wanted, what she needed, what would make her feel better. Even her apology was focused on getting something from me. Forgiveness, reconciliation, maybe future financial support when she needed it again. I don't want anything from you, Amber. That's the point. But what if I need help someday? What if something happens and I have nowhere else to turn? There it was. Not, I miss having you in my life or I valued our relationship. Just, what if I need something from you? Even her attempt at reconciliation was transactional. Then I guess you'll figure it out. Like everyone else does. Like I had to when you all wrote me off. Her face crumpled. You're being cruel. No, I'm being honest. For 12 years, I was there for you. Paid for everything. Supported everything. Showed up to everything. And the one time I asked to be included in something important, the one time I expected basic respect, you made it clear I wasn't worth it. So now you know how that feels. I walked away while she stood there crying in the produce section. Felt bad for about 30 seconds. Then remembered standing in my office 3 weeks before her wedding, listening to her scream about how I was rich anyway. So what did the money matter? Remembered the text from Linda on my wedding day. Remembered 12 years of raising someone else's kid like my own, only to discover I'd never been anything more than a convenient checkbook. Linda tried reaching out a few times. Emails, texts, phone calls I didn't answer. The messages started apologetic, then got angry, then circled back to guilt-tripping. Eventually, she stopped. Last I heard, she was dating some guy from her store. Good for her. Hope she treats him better than she treated me. Amber and Brett are still together as far as I know. Don't keep up with their lives. Don't care to. Jake's wife mentioned once that Brett's business was basically him working retail management now. Funny how the social media consulting career never materialized. But that's not my problem anymore. The condo is paid off now. Business is doing better than ever. Expanded to 10 employees, landed some major commercial contracts, and built up enough savings that I could retire early if I wanted to. Got into rock climbing, joined a gym, started traveling more, went to Iceland last year, planning a trip to New Zealand next spring, living the life I want instead of the life someone else expected me to fund. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.